Admiral Crixthack stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the view screen. His massive form cast shadows across the command deck as his 6 eyes studied the primitive world before him. This was going to be easy. Too easy, perhaps. The Galactic Empire had conquered over 3,000 worlds using the same method. Arrive with overwhelming force, show the locals what real power looked like, watch them fall to their knees in terror, accept their surrender. Move on to the next target. Sir, all 300 ships are in position, reported his tactical officer, a nervous Zephyrian whose scales were turning pale with excitement. Planet crackers are charged. Psionic terror broadcasters are ready. The fear wave generators are at full power. Crixthack nodded slowly. His species, the Vorthax, had perfected the art of intimidation over millions of years. They were 8 feet tall, covered in chitinous armor, and possessed a war cry that could literally scare smaller species to death. Their ships looked like massive black daggers against the stars, designed to inspire dread in anyone who saw them. Begin the standard protocol, Crixthack commanded. Open a channel to the surface. The communications officer activated the connection. Across 300 ships, the same signal went out to every radio, television, and communication device on the planet below. The message was simple and had worked every single time for the past 1,000 years. Primitive beings of the third planet, Crixthack began, his voice deep and terrible. I am Admiral Crixthack of the Galactic Empire. You are now witnesses to the might of 300 Imperial dreadnoughts. Each ship carries enough firepower to crack your pathetic world in half. Surrender now or face total destruction. He paused, letting the fear sink in. On every world, this was the moment when screaming began. When governments fell apart, when entire populations begged for mercy. The response came through the speakers a few seconds later. Yeah. Hi there. This is Dave speaking. Dave Martinez from Houston Mission Control. Listen, we're kinda in the middle of something right now. Could you maybe call back later? Say next Tuesday around 2? I've got the NCAA tournament on and the Longhorns are up by 3. Crixthack blinked all 6 of his eyes. He looked at his communications officer, who was staring at his instruments with confusion. Did he just ask us to call back later? The communications officer whispered. Perhaps they did not understand, Crixthack growled. Increase power to the fear wave generators. Let them feel the full weight of cosmic terror. The psionic weapons hummed to life, sending waves of pure fear toward the planet. These devices had broken the minds of entire civilizations. They projected images of death, destruction, and hopelessness directly into the brains of anyone within range. Dave, you still there? Came the voice from the planet. Look, if this is about that parking thing with the space station, we can totally work something out. But right now, I really need to focus on this game. The rockets are making a comeback, and I've got $20 riding on this. The bridge fell silent. Crixthack's war-scarred face twisted in confusion. The fear waves were working. His instruments showed they were reaching the planet. But somehow this Dave person was not only unaffected, he seemed actively bored. Sir, the tactical officer said quietly, should we fire a warning shot? Maybe destroy one of their moons. Not yet, Crixthack replied. Let me try the war cry. Every Vorthak learned the war cry from birth. It was a sound so terrifying, so filled with the promise of violence and death that it had caused enemy armies to flee without fighting. Some species had surrendered the moment they heard it broadcast from space. Crixthack opened his mouth and unleashed the cry. It started low and rose to a shriek that made the bridge windows vibrate. It was the sound of 1,000 nightmares given voice. Uh-huh, came Dave's response. Hey, are you guys lost or something? Because if you need directions to somewhere else, I can probably help you out. I've got Google Maps open anyway. The communications officer's scales had gone completely white. Sir, our sensors show the human understood the cry perfectly. His brain processed it as a threat, but his emotional response was mild annoyance. Crixthack sat down heavily in his command chair. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Fear was universal. Every species in the galaxy feared death, feared pain, feared the unknown. It was the foundation of the Empire's power. Maybe we should try a different approach, suggested the tactical officer. Some species respond better to displays of technological superiority. Fine, Crixthack snarled. Activate the reality warpers. Show them what we can do to the fabric of space itself. The reality warpers were the Empire's most impressive non-lethal weapons. They could bend space and time, create impossible geometries, and show any observer that their understanding of physics was laughably primitive. Space around the human planet began to twist. Stars rearranged themselves into impossible spirals. The planet's moon briefly turned purple and sprouted rings like a miniature Saturn. Gravity waves spelled out messages of doom in languages that hurt to read. "Oh, wow, that's pretty cool," Dave said. "Hey, Janet, come look at this. The aliens are doing some kind of light show. It's like a rave in space." A woman's voice joined the conversation. "That's nice, honey. Did you remember to record the game?" "Already on it," Dave replied. "So anyway, alien guys, that's some really neat special effects you've got there. Very creative. My kids would love this stuff. Are you planning to stick around long? Because if you're going to keep doing the flashy thing, could you maybe not do it during prime time? The neighbors might complain about the light pollution." Crixthack stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the deck. "This is impossible. They cannot be this calm. No species is this calm when faced with superior force." "Sir," the science officer spoke up, "I've been analyzing their global communications. They are discussing us, but not in the way we expected." "Show me." The main screen changed to display a stream of the humans' primitive internet communications. Crixthack read the translated text with growing disbelief. "Aliens showed up today. Kinda rude, TBH. Right in the middle of March Madness. Mom says dinner's ready, but there are aliens outside. Told them they have to wait. Alien ships look like they were designed by a goth teenager. Very edgy. 3/10 for originality. Anyone else think the alien leader sounds like he needs a cough drop?" Crixthack's hands clenched into fists. "They are mocking us." "Sir, I don't think they are," the science officer said carefully. "Their emotional readings suggest they genuinely see us as mildly interesting. Like a new television program they might watch if nothing else is on." The Admiral stared at the planet below. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. Every tool of intimidation in the Empire's arsenal had failed. The humans were not afraid. They were not awed. They were not even particularly curious. They were treating the arrival of 300 alien warships the same way they might treat an unexpected visit from a door-to-door salesman. "Sir, what are your orders?" the tactical officer asked. Crixthack looked around his bridge at the confused faces of his crew. These were veteran warriors who had seen the surrender of countless worlds. Now they looked lost, as if everything they knew about warfare had suddenly become meaningless. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "We are going to observe these humans more closely. There must be something we are missing. No species can be this," he searched for the word, "unbothered by our presence." As the great ships of the Empire settled into orbit around Earth, their crews began the most confusing siege in galactic history. Below them, the humans went about their daily lives, occasionally glancing up at the sky and making comments about the unusual cloud formations before returning to whatever they had been doing. Dave Martinez finished watching his basketball game, made himself a sandwich, and went to bed. He set his alarm for the next morning and made a mental note to call the aliens back on Tuesday as promised. Maybe they would make more sense after he had some coffee. 3 days had passed since the arrival of the Imperial fleet, and Admiral Crixthack was developing what humans might call a headache. His flagship's medical bay was filled with crew members suffering from what the ship's doctor called confusion syndrome, a condition that happened when Vorthak brains tried to process something. That made no sense at all. "Sir, we have analyzed every piece of data from the planet," reported his chief intelligence officer, Commander Zix. "The humans are definitely aware of our presence. They understand our weapons. They know we could destroy them. And yet they continue to act as if we are not here," Crixthack finished. "Yesterday, one of their military leaders was asked about us during what they call a press conference. Do you know what he said?" "No, sir. He said, and I quote, 'Yeah, the aliens are still up there. We're keeping an eye on them.'" "Next question." Crixthack's voice rose with frustration. "Keeping an eye on us? As if we were stray pets." The bridge crew exchanged worried looks. Their admiral was known for his perfect calm even in the worst battles. Seeing him frustrated was like watching a mountain lose its patience. "Sir, perhaps we should try a different approach," suggested the tactical officer. "Maybe we should demand to inspect their defenses. Every species has hidden weapons, secret bunkers, ancient technologies. Maybe the humans are just very good at hiding their true power. Crixthak considered this. It made sense. The humans had to be hiding something. No species could be this calm without having some terrible secret weapon ready to use. Very well, he decided. Open a channel to the surface. This time, a different human answered. She introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen from something called NASA. Unlike Dave, she seemed to take the situation more seriously. Admiral Crixthak, right? She said. Dave told me you might call back. What can I do for you? We demand to inspect your planetary defenses, Crixthak announced. You will provide us with a complete tour of your military installations and weapons systems. Oh, okay, Dr. Chen replied cheerfully. That's totally fine. When would be good for you? We could do tomorrow morning around 10. Fair warning, though, you might find it a bit boring. Most of our stuff is pretty basic. Crixthak paused. He had expected resistance, denials, desperate attempts to hide their secrets. Instead, the human was offering to show him everything with the same tone she might use to invite someone for lunch. We will arrive tomorrow at the time you specified, he said carefully. Great. Should I arrange for transportation from your landing site? Oh, and do you guys eat food or do you have special dietary needs? I want to make sure we have snacks. The Admiral closed the channel and stared at his officers. She offered us snacks. Maybe it is a trap, sir, suggested the communications officer hopefully. Maybe the snacks are poisoned. But even as he said it, none of them really believed it. The next morning, Admiral Crixthak took a small shuttle down to the planet's surface. Accompanied by his best tactical analysts and xenology experts, they landed at a facility called Kennedy Space Center, where Dr. Chen was waiting with what appeared to be a tour group. Welcome to Earth, she said brightly, apparently unimpressed by the fact that she was greeting an 8-foot-tall armored alien who commanded 300 warships. I brought some coffee and donuts. I wasn't sure what you guys drink, so I got a variety pack. The tour began in what Dr. Chen called the Vehicle Assembly Building. Crixthak expected to find massive weapons under construction. Instead, he found humans working on what appeared to be large metal tubes. This is where we put together our rockets, Dr. Chen explained, gesturing at the primitive-looking devices. They're mostly for carrying supplies up to the International Space Station. Oh, and we've got some Mars missions planned. Pretty exciting stuff. These are your weapons? Asked Commander Zik, studying the rockets with confusion. Weapons? Oh no, these are just for space exploration. Though I guess you could use them as weapons if you really wanted to. But that would be a terrible waste of money. Crixthak walked around one of the rockets, his tactical mind analyzing its capabilities. It was pathetically weak by galactic standards. It could barely reach orbit, let alone threaten another planet. Yet the humans seemed genuinely proud of it. Where are your real weapons? He demanded. Your planetary defense systems? Your military spacecraft? Well, we've got some satellites that watch for asteroids, Dr. Chen said thoughtfully. And there's the military, but most of their stuff is for fighting each other, not aliens. Nobody really planned for the alien thing, to be honest. She led them to the Mission Control Center, where dozens of humans sat at computers monitoring various displays. When the aliens entered, a few people looked up and waved, then went back to their work. This is where we track everything that's happening in space, Dr. Chen explained. Including your ships, actually. Nice formation, by the way. Very symmetrical. You are tracking our fleet? Crixthak asked, suddenly alert. Oh, sure, you guys are pretty hard to miss. We've got telescopes, radar, that sort of thing. Jerry over there has been taking pictures of your ships. Want to see? A human named Jerry showed them photographs of the Imperial fleet taken from the surface. They were surprisingly detailed for such primitive equipment. Got some really good shots of that big ship in the middle, Jerry said proudly. Is that yours? Love the design. Very intimidating. The tour continued for several hours. The humans showed them everything. Their space center, their tracking stations, their modest collection of rockets and satellites. At no point did Crixthak see anything that could threaten even a single Imperial ship, let alone an entire fleet. But what disturbed him more was the humans' attitude. They were not trying to hide their weakness. They seemed genuinely happy to show off their primitive technology, like children displaying their toys to adults. This cannot be everything, Crixthak said finally. Where are your underground bunkers? Your hidden bases? Your secret weapons? Dr. Chen looked puzzled. Secret weapons? I mean, the military has some classified stuff, but nothing that would work against spaceships. Most of our weapons are designed for use on the planet's surface. Why would we need space weapons when nobody was shooting at us from space until now? You have no defenses against invasion from orbit? Well, not really. I suppose we could throw rocks at you, but that seems rude. That evening, Crixthack returned to his ship more confused than ever. His analysis team had confirmed what he had seen. The humans possessed no significant military space technology. No energy weapons. No force fields. No planet-killing devices. They were exactly as primitive as they appeared. Yet they showed no fear. "Sir," Commander Zix reported, "we have received an invitation." An invitation? "Yes, sir. From someone called Barbara Martinez. She says she is Dave's wife, and she would like to invite you and your crew to something called a block party this weekend. She says there will be grilled food and games for the children." Crixthack sat down heavily. "A block party? Yes, sir. She also says to bring your appetite because her husband makes excellent hamburgers." The Admiral looked out at the small blue planet below his ship. Somewhere down there, humans were going about their normal lives, completely unconcerned that 300 alien warships hung in orbit above their heads. They were inviting their potential conquerors to neighborhood barbecues. "Sir, what should I tell them?" Commander Zix asked. Crixthack was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Tell them we will consider their invitation, and ask what we should bring to a block party." "Sir? If we are going to understand these creatures, Commander, we need to observe them in their natural environment. And apparently their natural environment includes grilled food and games for children." As the sun set over Earth, Admiral Crixthack found himself facing the strangest challenge of his military career: figuring out what to bring to a human social gathering. His 300 ships continued their orbit, but for the first time in Imperial history, a conquest fleet was being invited to a neighborhood cookout. The humans, meanwhile, went to bed without locking their doors, apparently unconcerned that alien invaders were parked overhead. Some of them even waved at the ships as they passed overhead, as if greeting distant neighbors. Admiral Crixthack stood in what humans called a backyard, holding a paper plate with something called a hamburger on it. Around him, members of the most feared military force in the galaxy were engaged in activities he had no words for. Commander Zix was learning to throw horseshoes from a 10-year-old human child. 3 decimators of Zephyr Prime, elite warriors who had never known defeat, were arguing about the proper way to flip meat on a cooking device called a grill. "You're overcooking it," said one decimator to another. "Look, the juices are running clear. That means it's done." "The human Dave said medium rare," the second decimator replied. "I think that means we cook it less." "Maybe we should ask Barbara," suggested the third. "She seems to know about these things." Crixthack watched this exchange with the growing feeling that his entire understanding of the universe was fundamentally wrong. These were the same warriors who had reduced the crystalline cities of Vega to dust. Now they were debating hamburger preparation with suburban humans. The block party had been going on for 3 hours. The humans had greeted the aliens like old friends, shown them how to use lawn chairs, and immediately put them to work helping with food preparation. Nobody seemed concerned that these were conquerors from space. They treated them like slightly exotic neighbors who had moved in down the street. "Admiral," called Dave Martinez, walking over with a beer in one hand and a spatula in the other. "How's that burger?" "Barbara made her special sauce. Secret family recipe, it is." "Adequate," Crixthack replied, though he had to admit it was actually quite good. "Tell me, Dave Martinez, are you not concerned that we could destroy your planet at any moment?" Dave took a sip of his beer and considered this. "Well, sure, I guess you could. But you haven't yet, and you've been here almost a week. Plus, you seem like decent folks. A little dramatic maybe, but decent." "Dramatic? You know, all that stuff about cosmic destruction and eternal suffering. Very theatrical. My wife directs community theater and she says you guys have a real flair for the dramatic. Ever consider acting?" Before Crixthack could respond, a small human child, perhaps 6 years old, tugged on his armored leg. "Mr. Alien," the child said, looking up at him with wide eyes. "My dad says you're from space. Do you know any aliens who look like the ones in Star Wars?" Crixthack looked down at the child, then at Dave. "She is not afraid of me." "Should she be?" Dave asked. "I mean, you're just a person, right? From space, but still a person." "Susie's pretty friendly. She likes meeting new people." The child named Susie had apparently lost interest in Crixthack and was now trying to teach a Vorthak lieutenant how to play hopscotch. The lieutenant, a veteran of 40 campaigns, was following her instructions with intense concentration. "This is wrong," Crixthack said quietly. Your species should be cowering in terror. We are conquerors. We have destroyed civilizations older than your recorded history. Dave nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, I figured you probably had. That's kind of sad, actually. Why'd you do that? Because that is what conquerors do. But why do you want to be conquerors? Seems like a lot of work, and probably not very fulfilling in the long run. Crixthack opened his mouth to explain the glory of galactic dominion, the natural order of strong ruling over weak, the destiny of superior species to guide inferior ones. But looking around at the peaceful gathering, the words seemed to lose their meaning. A week later, Crixthack tried a different approach. If the humans could not be intimidated by force, perhaps they could be awed by culture. He invited representatives from Earth to attend a demonstration of imperial might aboard his flagship. The humans who arrived were not government officials or military leaders. They were the same neighborhood group from the block party, plus a few others who had been curious about the aliens. Barbara Martinez brought homemade cookies. Jerry brought his camera. This is incredible, Dr. Chen said as they walked through the ship's corridors. The engineering alone must have taken decades to develop. How do you generate power for something this size? Controlled singularities, Commander Zix explained proudly. We harness the power of miniature black holes. Wow, that's amazing. We're still using chemical rockets. You guys are way ahead of us. Crixthack led them to the observation deck, where they could see the full majesty of the Imperial fleet. 300 ships stretched across space, their weapons pointed at the small planet below. Behold, he said dramatically, the might of the Galactic Empire. We have conquered 3,000 worlds with this fleet. We have brought entire star systems under our control. Tremble before our power. The humans looked out at the ships with obvious appreciation. Very impressive, said Dave. Must be expensive to maintain, though. How many people does it take to crew all those ships? Approximately 2 million beings, Crixthack replied. 2 million? Barbara looked concerned. That's a lot of people to keep fed. Are you sure you're getting good value for your budget? Seems like you could probably do the same job with fewer ships and save a lot of money. Crixthack felt something inside his brain start to hurt. The size of the fleet is meant to inspire fear and demonstrate our overwhelming superiority. Right, but if you're going to conquer planets anyway, why do you need to scare them first? Wouldn't it be more efficient to just ask nicely? You might be surprised how many people would be willing to cooperate if you just explained what you wanted. The Admiral led them to the gladiatorial arena, where the Empire's finest warriors engaged in combat for the entertainment of their masters. The fighters were skilled beyond measure, their battles a deadly art form that had been perfected over millennia. This is where our greatest champions prove their worth in combat, Crixthack announced as two massive warriors began their fight. Only the strongest survive. Only the most brutal earn glory. The humans watched the battle with interest. The fighters moved with incredible speed and skill, their weapons creating patterns of light as they clashed again and again. Guy on the left has terrible footwork, observed Dave. He's leaving himself open on his weak side. It's other one's not watching his guard, added Barbara. My son took karate for 3 years and his instructor would have been all over him for dropping his defense like that. A teenager named Tyler, who had come along out of curiosity, was actually recording the fight on his phone. This is pretty cool, he said, but the choreography could be better. Some of the moves don't make tactical sense. Like, why would you do a spinning attack when your opponent could just step aside? The gladiators finished their battle, and the crowd of Imperial officers roared their approval. The humans clapped politely. Very entertaining, Dr. Chen said. Have you considered adding instant replay? Sometimes the action happens so fast it's hard to see the good parts. Crixthack stared at her. Instant replay. Slow motion cameras, different angles. Really lets the audience appreciate the skill involved. Plus, it would help with close calls if you're keeping score. The final stop on the tour was the Hall of Conquest, where massive holographic displays showed the Empire's greatest victories. Burning worlds, fleeing populations, the surrender of mighty civilizations, all of it rendered in perfect detail. This is our history, Crixthack said with pride. Every world we have brought under Imperial rule. Every species that has bent the knee before our might. The humans studied the displays with the same attention they had given everything else. Wow, that's a lot of planets, Dave said. How do you keep track of them all? Must be a nightmare for your administrators. The graphics are really well done, added Tyler, still filming with his phone. Reminds me of that one video game. What was it called? Space Conquerors. The art style is very similar. An elderly human named Frank, who had been quiet for most of the tour, finally spoke up. Son, he said to Crixthack, I was in the military for 30 years, fought in 3 wars, and I can tell you something about conquest, it never lasts. You can win all the battles you want, but if people don't want to be ruled, they'll find ways to make your life difficult. Sometimes the smartest thing is to make friends instead of enemies. Crixthack looked around at the humans who were studying his greatest achievements with the same mild interest they might show at a museum. They were not awed. They were not inspired. They were not afraid. They were politely bored. Let's head back, Barbara said cheerfully. I've got a casserole in the oven, and you're all welcome to stay for dinner. I made enough for an army. As they walked back through the ship, Crixthack realized that something fundamental had changed. For the first time in his long career, he was beginning to question whether conquest was really the best way to run a galactic empire. Behind him, 2 of his most feared warriors were still arguing about proper grilling techniques. The emergency session of the Imperial High Council was not going well. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered via hologram to discuss what was being called the human problem, and nobody seemed to have any good answers. They are spreading, announced Overlord Nexus, the Empire's chief strategist. His image flickered as he spoke from his command ship 3 sectors away. Reports are coming in from 17 different systems. Subject populations are asking questions. They want to know why they should be afraid of the Empire if the humans are not afraid. Impossible, snarled General Vactor of the Crushing Fist Legion. Fear is universal. All species fear death. All species fear pain. The humans must be hiding something. We have analyzed them completely, replied Dr. Kethvar, the Empire's leading xenobiologist. They are exactly what they appear to be. A young species with primitive technology and no special defenses. They should be the easiest conquest in our history. Then why? Overlord Nexus asked quietly. Are they treating our ultimatums like junk mail? Admiral Crixthack, attending the meeting from his flagship above Earth, had been dreading this moment. His failure to intimidate a single primitive planet was becoming a galaxy-wide crisis. The humans have a different response to threats than any species we have encountered, he reported. They acknowledge the danger, understand the consequences, and then proceed as if neither matters. Yesterday, one of their leaders was asked about our presence during a public gathering. He said, and I quote, "The aliens are still hanging around. They seem nice enough. We're keeping an eye on the situation. Nice enough?" General Vactor's voice rose to a shriek. "We are the terror of the cosmos. We are the shadow that devours worlds." "Yes, sir. The humans are aware of that. They just do not seem to care very much." The holographic council chamber fell silent. For over 1,000 years, the Galactic Empire had ruled through fear. Every species understood that resistance meant death, compliance meant survival. It was simple, efficient, and had never failed. Until now. "Sir?" Admiral Crixthack continued reluctantly, "There have been other developments." "What developments?" Overlord Nexus demanded. "The humans have been socializing with our crews. Many of our warriors have attended local gatherings. Some have formed what they call friendships with human civilians. Commander Zix has learned to play something called poker, and has apparently won several games. Socializing? General Vactor looked like he might have a stroke. "Our warriors are socializing with the enemy. They do not appear to view the humans as enemies, sir. The humans invite them to meals, ask about their families, and treat them like welcome guests. It is having an effect on morale." This was an understatement. Half of Crixthack's crew had taken to visiting the planet during their off-duty hours. They came back with human food, human entertainment, and human ideas about how things should be done. Just yesterday, Lieutenant Grax had suggested they implement something called Casual Fridays on the ship. "This is unacceptable," Overlord Nexus declared. "We will escalate. Deploy the Dreadstar." The Dreadstar was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a mobile fortress the size of a small moon, equipped with planet-killing weapons and terror devices that could break the will of entire star systems. Its mere appearance in a system was usually enough to end any thoughts of resistance. "Sir, is that wise?" Admiral Crixthack asked. "The humans have shown no hostility toward us. Destroying them seems unnecessary." "The humans are a virus," General Vactor snapped. "Their immunity to fear is spreading. If we do not stop it here, it will spread throughout the Empire. We will lose everything. 3 days later, the Dreadstar emerged from hyperspace near Earth. It was a massive black sphere covered in weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. Energy discharges crackled across its surface like captured lightning. The sight of it had driven enemy populations to madness with terror. The response from Earth came within minutes. "Hello there," said a calm female voice. "This is Gladys Henderson speaking. I'm Earth's appointed spokesperson for space stuff today. My granddaughter helped me set up this radio thing." Admiral Crixthack, watching from his flagship, felt his heart sink. They had sent their most terrifying weapon, and Earth had assigned its response to someone's grandmother. "Primitive human," came the voice from the Dreadstar, deep and terrible and artificially enhanced to inspire maximum fear. "You stand before the ultimate expression of imperial might. The Dreadstar has ended the existence of 1,000 worlds. Surrender now or watch your pathetic planet burn." "Well, that's quite a speech, dear," Gladys replied. "Very dramatic. But before you do anything hasty, have you considered the environmental impact? Destroying planets seems like it would create a lot of space debris. That can't be good for navigation." There was a long pause from the Dreadstar. "What?" the voice finally asked, no longer quite as terrifying. "Space debris, honey. All those bits of broken planet floating around. Ships could run into them. Seems dangerous. Have you thought about cleanup costs?" Admiral Crixthack watched his tactical display as the Dreadstar's weapons powered up. Energy readings climbed toward planet-killing levels. This was it. The humans had finally pushed the Empire too far. "Also," Gladys continued, apparently oblivious to the fact that world-ending weapons were being aimed at her planet, "if you're going to blow up the moon, could you give us some warning? That would mess up the tides something fierce. My arthritis acts up when the weather changes, and I imagine exploding the moon would really throw things off." The energy readings on the Dreadstar began to fluctuate. Something was wrong. "Grandmother," the terrible voice said, and now it just sounded confused. "Do you understand that we are about to destroy your world?" "Oh, yes, dear, I heard you the first time." "Very impressive. But have you tried turning your dread beam off and on again? Sometimes that fixes things when they're not working properly." "What?" "You know, like when the computer freezes up. Turn it off, count to 10, turn it back on. Works wonders. My grandson taught me that trick." Admiral Crixthack watched in amazement as the Dreadstar's weapons began powering down. The ship's crew was apparently so confused by Gladys Henderson that they were actually following her technical advice. But the real shock came from his communications officer. "Sir, we are receiving transmissions from across the Empire. The conversation with the human grandmother is being broadcast on all frequencies." "What?" "Sir, it appears that other species in the Empire are listening to this exchange. And they are laughing." Crixthack pulled up the communication logs. Across dozens of star systems, subject populations were sharing recordings of the conversation. The mighty Dreadstar, terror of the cosmos, was being given technical support by a human grandmother. The comments were devastating. "Maybe the humans are right. These Empire guys don't seem that scary. If a grandmother can talk back to them, why can't we? I vote we try the polite approach. Seems to work for the humans." Within hours, the Empire was receiving formal requests from 17 different systems. Not surrenders. Not desperate pleas for mercy. Polite requests for renegotiation of their imperial status. "Sir," Commander Zix reported quietly, "we are also receiving messages from our own crews across the fleet." "What kind of messages?" "They are asking if they can extend their shore leave on Earth. Several have requested permission to attend something called a community college to learn human skills. Lieutenant Grax wants to take a cooking class." Admiral Crixthack looked out at the small blue planet that was somehow dismantling the greatest military force in galactic history without firing a single shot. The humans were not conquering the Empire. They were just being themselves, and somehow that was enough to make everyone else question why they had been so afraid in the first place. "Sir, the Dreadstar is requesting instructions. Should they proceed with planetary destruction?" Crixthack thought about Gladys Henderson, probably sitting in her kitchen right now, maybe making tea and wondering if the aliens had figured out their technical problems. He thought about Dave Martinez and his hamburgers, about Barbara and her casseroles, about Tyler and his phone videos, about all the ordinary humans who had treated the most feared military force in the galaxy like slightly exotic neighbors. "Tell the Dreadstar to stand down," he said finally. "Sir?" Stand down, Commander. We need to try a different approach. As news of the Dreadstar's retreat spread across the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the subjects of the Galactic Empire stopped being afraid, and once they stopped being afraid, they started asking questions about why they had been afraid in the first place. The arrival of the Supreme Overlord was supposed to fix everything. For 3 months, the Galactic Empire had been falling apart as species after species stopped being afraid and started asking uncomfortable questions about Imperial rule. Rebellions were breaking out. Trade routes were being renegotiated. Some systems had actually declared independence and were forming their own peaceful alliances. It was, by any measure, a complete disaster. The Supreme Overlord had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years through pure terror. Ancient beyond measure, powerful beyond comprehension, this entity had never needed to use force because its mere presence was enough to drive lesser beings mad with fear. Entire star systems had surrendered just from hearing its name spoken aloud. Now it hung in space above, Earth in a ship that defied description, a writhing mass of dark energy and impossible geometry that hurt to look at directly. Reality bent around it like light around a black hole. This was the being that had created the Empire, the source of all its power and authority. The humans had organized a welcoming committee. Is that really necessary? Admiral Crixthak asked, watching through his view screen as a small group of humans set up what appeared to be a party in a field below. They insisted, Commander Zix replied. The local Rotary Club wanted to make a good impression. They have prepared what they call a meet-and-greet event. A meet-and-greet. For the Supreme Overlord, yes, sir. They also made a banner. Crixthak looked closer at the display. Indeed, there was a large banner stretched between 2 poles that read, "Welcome to Earth," in bright letters. A smaller sign next to it said, "Refreshments available." The Supreme Overlord's ship began to descend toward the planet. As it approached, reality started to warp. Gravity fluctuated. Time moved in strange loops. The very air seemed to whisper terrible secrets. The humans below continued setting up their event as if nothing unusual was happening. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "the Supreme Overlord is preparing to manifest on the planet's surface." This was the moment that should have ended everything. When the Supreme Overlord appeared in physical form, its terror was so absolute that most beings simply died from shock. Those who survived usually spent the rest of their lives as broken, mindless shells. The manifestation began in the center of the field. Dark energy swirled and condensed, taking on a shape that suggested vast wings, burning eyes and claws that could tear through the fabric of space itself. The air filled with a sound like screaming stars. A 5-year-old human child walked up to the forming entity and tugged on what might have been its robe. "Excuse me, mister," the child said politely. "Are you here for the party?" The manifestation stopped. The terrible energies flickered and wavered. For the first time in 2 millennia, the Supreme Overlord experienced something it had never felt before. Confusion. The entity began, its voice like the death of galaxies. "I am the Supreme Overlord, the destroyer of hope, the void that devours light." "That's a really long name," the child replied. "I'm Emma. Do you want some juice?" Mrs. Henderson made cookies too. The Supreme Overlord looked down at the small human. In all its eons of existence, no being had ever responded to its presence with an offer of refreshments. You are not afraid of me?"
"Should I be?"
Emma asked. "You seem nice. Are you friends with the other space people?" "They're really cool. Commander Zix taught me how to play checkers." By now, other humans had noticed the arrival of their guest. Instead of fleeing in terror, they approached with the same friendly curiosity they had shown all the other aliens. "You must be the big boss everyone's been talking about," said a man wearing a name tag that read, "Hello. My name is Bob. Welcome to Earth. I'm Bob Patterson, president of the Rotary Club. We're so glad you could make it." The Supreme Overlord tried to reassert its terrifying presence. It expanded its form, darkening the sky and causing the ground to tremble. Its voice became a roar that should have shattered minds. "Behold, I am the Supreme Overlord. Fear me, for I am death incarnate." "Wow, you've got quite a set of lungs on you," Bob replied, apparently impressed. "You should meet our church choir director. She'd love that kind of projection." An elderly woman approached with a clipboard and a pen. "Are you planning to stay long?" she asked. "I need to know for the catering." Also, do you have any dietary restrictions? We want to make sure everyone feels included. The Supreme Overlord stared at her. Dietary restrictions? You know, allergies, special needs, that sort of thing. My grandson is lactose intolerant, so I always ask. Better safe than sorry. I do not eat food. Oh, that's no problem at all. We have plenty of beverages. Would you like something to drink? For several minutes, the most powerful being in the galaxy stood in awkward silence while humans bustled around it, setting up tables and arranging chairs. Someone gave it a name tag. Another person asked if it wanted to sign up for the newsletter. This is not how this works, the Supreme Overlord said finally, its voice smaller now, almost plaintive. You are supposed to be terrified. You are supposed to beg for mercy. Why would we do that? Asked a woman named Janet. You haven't done anything mean yet. Are you planning to do something mean? Because if so, we should probably discuss it first. Maybe we can work something out. The Supreme Overlord tried a different approach. It reached out with its vast power, lifting a nearby mountain into the air with its mind and reshaping it into a twisted spire of rock. The humans applauded politely. That's amazing, said Bob. How do you do that? Is it like telekinesis? It is the power of the void, the Supreme Overlord replied automatically. The dark force that bends reality to my will. Could you teach someone else to do it? My back isn't what it used to be, and being able to lift heavy things without bending over would be really helpful. Emma tugged on the entity's robe again. Can you do balloon animals too? The Supreme Overlord looked around at the gathering of humans. They were not cowering. They were not pleading. They were treating the most terrifying force in the universe like a slightly exotic guest at a community picnic. And somehow, for the first time in eons, the Supreme Overlord did not feel like a cosmic horror. It felt like a person, a very powerful, very old, very confused person who had been invited to a party and was not sure what to do next. I have ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years through fear, it said quietly. That sounds exhausting, Janet replied sympathetically. Have you ever considered a different approach? Fear seems like it would create a lot of stress for everyone involved. But if they are not afraid, how do I control them? Maybe you don't need to control them, suggested Bob. Maybe you could just ask them to cooperate. You'd be surprised how helpful people can be when you treat them nicely. The conversation was interrupted by Admiral Crickstack's voice coming from a communication device one of the humans was carrying. Supreme Overlord, we are receiving reports from across the Empire. 17 more systems have declared independence. The Zephyrian Trade Union is demanding renegotiation of all contracts. And sir, the Decimator Legions are requesting permission to attend human universities. The Supreme Overlord sank down until it was sitting on the grass, its terrible form somehow looking dejected. My empire is collapsing, it said. Well, Emma said thoughtfully, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Empires sound like a lot of work. Why don't you try something easier? Like what? I don't know. What do you like to do? Besides the scary ruler stuff, I mean. The Supreme Overlord considered this question. It had been so long since anyone had asked what it enjoyed rather than what it demanded. I used to enjoy creating things. Before the Empire, I made stars, shaped worlds, brought beauty to empty space gals. That sounds really cool, Emma said. Why did you stop? Because ruling required all my attention. There was no time for creation when I had to maintain control through fear. Bob leaned forward with interest. You know, if you're looking for a career change, we could really use someone with your skills. Urban planning, environmental restoration, that sort of thing. The pay isn't great, but it's honest work. 3 hours later, the Supreme Overlord found itself sitting at a picnic table, eating something called a ham sandwich and listening to a presentation about Earth's environmental challenges. The humans had somehow convinced it to help with reforestation efforts, using its reality warping powers to accelerate plant growth and restore damaged ecosystems. It's really quite fulfilling, the entity admitted to Admiral Crickstack, who had come down to the surface to find his ultimate superior. I had forgotten what it felt like to create rather than destroy. Sir, what should I tell the fleet? The Supreme Overlord looked around at the humans who were now teaching several alien officers how to play volleyball. Tell them the war is over, it said finally. Tell them we are going to try something new. What should we try, sir? Cooperation. Voluntary participation. Asking nicely instead of demanding through fear. The Supreme Overlord paused. And apparently more social gatherings. The humans seem to believe that many problems can be solved through what they call potluck dinners. Within a year, the Galactic Empire had transformed into something unprecedented, a voluntary confederation of worlds working together for mutual benefit.